Welcome back to the Jessica Wett Show. This is episode 4 of Conversations with a Counselor. I'm here today with Amanda Dewal of Strength Counselling Services. Thank you for being here with me today, Amanda.
Oh, of course. Thank you for having me.
I'd love to do a recap. Our last episode, we were talking about me overcoming my paralysis of doing my taxes, getting a car. Both of those things have happened now.
Yay! That's wonderful.
And now I'm like, now what? Now what, Amanda?
Wow, so that's great. I'm not entirely sure how long it's been, but it's been a few weeks since we last saw each other.
Yeah.
And the last thing on the list was getting that car. And you did that on your own. We talked about in the last time we met that I could come with you if you wanted that, but you just nailed it all by yourself. So that's fantastic. I'd love to hear the recap of how that went for you over the last few weeks. And also, I didn't know about the taxes, so that's great.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that too. Tell me how you did it.
Well, we were planning on you joining me for that process, and I don't know why that was stressing me out so much that I was like, I just need to buy a car before I see her next. I just need to buy a car before I see her next. And then that like made me like spiral and
Okay.
and then I did buy a car and everything went perfect. And then I drove it yesterday and now I'm hearing problems with the heating cooling system. And I did not get a pre-purchase inspection, which is not on Jessica's list of to-dos of how you buy a car that I've been researching for 9 months. But I was so fed up that I was like, oh, whatever, it won't matter. So I was feeling super good about that decision. And I was like, wow, I'm the best person ever. And now I'm like, let's not focus on negative self-talk. That's what I'm like.
That's right. Very good. Let's not focus on negative self-talk. I love that. Okay, so a couple questions I have for you. Before I get into that, I think it's fantastic that you got a car. That has been something that you've been really, if it's fair to say, struggling with for 9 months now. And when you texted me and said I got a car, I was just elated for you, like fantastic. And how do we say this? Although I don't want to put unnecessary strain on anybody to create a change of behavior. I don't intend to do that. But if there was any part of this counseling relationship that we have and this experience that you're having here with me, if any part of that helps push you to do this,
of course,
then congratulations. Like, that's wonderful.
Yes, thank you. It's the accountability of like, it's the accountability of it that's so helpful. Like even silly things like doing my taxes, just knowing like, okay, I'm going to talk with Amanda next week and I want to be able to be like, yeah, I have that done. Not because you give a shit, but because it'll feel good for me to be like, yeah, I did it.
Right. Well, careful. I do give a shit. I give
lots
of shits.
Yeah.
But you're not doing it for me.
Yeah.
You're doing it for you. But because I'm in the background saying, hey, Jess, wondering if you want to get together again, right? And you're like, okay, I got to get on this stuff. And so I wouldn't say that that's the counseling experience directly that's doing that. That's you doing that because of the counseling experience.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's not me doing that for you. You are choosing that because at the end of the day, you could have taken this break like so many people do in counseling. They take a few weeks off. Sometimes they take a few months off. Sometimes they take a few years off, right? And some people never come back at all. Yeah. So you could have taken a little break and then said, you know what? I'm not ready for any of this. I'm not ready to take accountability. And I'm just going to not respond, or I'm just not going to have these sessions anymore with Amanda. Or maybe I will tell her and I'll tell her that I'm not interested anymore because I'm not ready or whatever it is, right? People have all kinds of reasons why they don't continue. So there was something that happened for you where you're here today. You did continue. Not only are you here, but you finished the taxes and you bought the car. So I'm curious about that process for you, notably because you have been in counseling a lot in your life and you have stopped a lot in your life. And so coming full circle here, what happened for you that brought you back today?
I was excited to tell you that I did it.
Yay!
Finally!
Okay. Yes, wonderful. Okay, now let's delve into that excitement a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Now, is that excitement to tell me for you, or is it for, how do I say this? Or is it so you can feel accomplished in somebody else's eyes, aka me in this case?
No, not that part. It's definitely,
Okay.
I feel like you understand the psychological struggle it was for me to make that decision. So, in telling you, you can really appreciate how difficult that was for me. Whereas if I
Yeah.
just tell anyone else, it's they do know, but they don't understand like the extent of it. So I feel like you just
Mhm.
understand and can appreciate it on a deeper level, which makes me feel like more validated and shares the level of proud I
Awesome.
am of myself.
Yes, and I'm so proud of you also. Like, no doubt, like this is huge. And we always say as counselors, any progress is progress. This is huge progress for you. But even if you had come back today and said, "Oh, I just did this little thing," that's still progress, right?
Mm-hmm.
So any amount is excellent, and we want to celebrate that. But you've really made a huge feat today. Well, whenever you bought the car, and I want to celebrate that with you. That's fantastic. Um, I'm curious about what it does for your self-esteem to have someone who understands,
Mm-hmm.
like me, be proud of you for doing the thing. How does that help you?
It just feels more legitimate because I could easily just be like, and part of me still does, obviously, in my head, be like, you just bought a fucking car. You should have been able to do that so long ago, like all that negative self talk stuff. But what was the question again?
What
What
does it do for you for me to be proud of you?
it like reminds me that I have a legitimate reason to be proud of myself because you're qualified to determine that.
Okay. Okay. So we've been doing a lot of work since we started on that negative self-talk loop, and something that was pretty profound for you in one of the sessions was not being mean to yourself.
Mm.
That's my summary of that. But um, does this piece here of me being proud of you or qualified to know how big the struggle was for you, does that help you to be less hard on yourself, or in other words, be kinder to yourself?
Yeah, because it gives me like a reality check. Because
Hmm.
I don't trust other people's understanding of my, I was going to say crazy brain, my different brain. But you have the qualifications for me to actually be able to like confirm and trust that I'm going in the right direction and I'm not like applauding myself for nothing.
Right. Okay. So let's back up a little bit. Let's say that I wasn't here
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't know about this,
Mm-hmm.
and nobody that is qualified to know the struggle or be proud of you for the struggle, say that person didn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know within that depth of yourself, do you know that this is a big deal?
Yeah. But yeah, that just makes me emotional thinking about it because I've just been like invalidated for so long, including by myself, that to have a healthcare professional, a mental health care professional, like validate and confirm that my reality is real is like fabulous.
Yeah. Okay. And what I also see here is that even if I wasn't here, you would still know it's a big deal.
Mm.
Even if you couldn't plug into it,
Mm.
even if that negative self-talk loop or that mean self came back and said, "Oh, you're just being whatever," and not validating you,
Mm.
you still know, Jessica, at your core that this was a big deal,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
It's just that extra
Okay.
level of like validation.
Right. Okay. And I'm happy to give that to you, and happy to totally celebrate this with you. But the takeaway from this piece, anyway, that I want you to remember or bring into conversations with yourself is that you already knew it was a big deal.
Yeah.
You didn't actually need me to tell you that because you knew it. The validation is nice to say, "Hey, I'm not crazy or unwell or
Yeah.
whatever it is," because this professional can say like, "Wow, great job."
Mm-hmm.
But the reality is you don't truly need my validation
Mm.
to know that you've done a great job.
Yeah.
Isn't that true?
Yeah, it just makes the doubt so much easier. Like with being mean to myself,
Yeah.
I'm not as skilled yet in like truly trusting my own self-esteem and voice.
Mm-hmm.
So in my head, I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, but Amanda would think this is a good thing. So if Amanda would think
Right.
this is a good thing, then, well, I guess I.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So let's take this and I'm going to ask you to consider practicing this
Mm.
in conversations with yourself when I'm not around. And so it could be something like the taxes. I didn't even know about that. So that's great. So um I mean, the taxes are already done. So what we want to focus on is like things that you do on a regular basis, like brushing your teeth. We've talked
Mm.
about this too. So if you brush your teeth, you can be like, that's a big deal. I don't give a shit what anybody says about you or your capacity. The truth is if you struggle with something and you can do that something, regardless of how small it is, it's a big deal.
Mm.
Period. And I say that to you and anybody else who might hear this. It's a big deal if you've succeeded in that. And
Mm.
so the practice here, Jessica, for ideally forever, but we'll start with the next week, is if you do something that's hard for you and that you don't want to do, and that negative self-talk is like rolling,
Mm.
and you do it anyway, I want you to attempt to celebrate yourself without telling anyone.
Mm.
Right? And say, okay, even if the self-celebration is Amanda would be proud of me
Mm.
because I am, and I will be proud of you. And
Mm.
I have been proud of you and all of the above. So if that helps you to self-motivate that celebration, do it.
Mm.
And then guess what? You're going to come to session and I'm going to say, hey, I'm proud of you.
Mm.
Right? And so you're going to have that validation there. We want to strengthen the muscle of self-validation where
Mm.
you don't actually need other people to tell you one way or the other
Mm.
if it's good or not good. You just know automatically already, and then you can honor that. I'm
Yeah.
just curious what you think about what I've just said.
Yeah, like trusting myself.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What happens there?
that's a hard one. It makes me think of that text messages that I was sent you when I was just constantly thinking about like all the invalidation that I've had in my life externally that makes it hard for me to
Yeah.
like trust myself.
So what's happening right now?
Yeah, just thinking about that. Yeah.
Okay. Can you tell me more about it? Tell me about the emotion. Tell me about the thoughts behind the emotion.
Like I feel like I want to say I trust myself and I know what's real and what's not real, but just thinking about that concept makes me think of every time I've been told otherwise by people
Mm-hmm.
who shouldn't have.
Right. And that's a lot stronger than your ability to trust yourself
Mm-hmm.
right now. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's emotion in that. Okay. So what we want to be focusing on is, like I said, strengthening that muscle, but also every time that I validate you, then you can, because you're trusting me more than you're trusting yourself,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
Right. So I can validate you and you can say, okay, see, because she thinks this, then I'm doing well or I'm okay.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And if that's going to help you get to a place where you start to validate yourself more, that's great.
Yeah.
That's really what counseling is. It helps us to go in the direction that we want to go with that educated support. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So that's fantastic. And that little girl inside of you that we have briefly talked about before, she's just crying out and saying, like, I need you to love me.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And when she doesn't feel loved, she's got to turn to someone like me or someone else to say, hey, can you please love me? And unfortunately, in your life, you've had a ton of people who have not loved you,
Mm-hmm.
even if they've said they've loved you. And that's where that core wound is,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so we're turning it around. So the practice in the coming week is to, even if you use my strength for you, that's what I would call it, because I have a lot of strength for you and I have a lot of pride in you or pride is not the right word, but I am very proud of you, right? And I hope that you're seeing that more and more. And so when you're looking in the mirror and you're saying something negative or thinking something negative, I want you to turn it around and say, this isn't what Amanda and I do.
Yeah.
What we do is whatever,
Yeah.
the opposite of that, right? Whatever in that moment you need to do. And then eventually, what we're going to see over the course of weeks and months and years of doing this practice, you're going to see it change to where you don't need to include me anymore. You would just say, oh, we don't do that. This is what Jessica does. And Jessica talks kind to herself. Jessica loves herself. Jessica is supportive of herself.
Yeah.
And Jessica knows at her core what the right thing to do is. And Jessica can trust herself. Right? Any other thoughts about that?
Yeah, no, I don't know. I guess I'm just thinking back to like when we were supposed to have that session where you were gonna help me buy a car and stuff. I get caught in these traps of like rumination, and where I sit and think back on previous memories where people have made me not trust myself, and I like argue with them in my head, and I get so caught up in this loop of just hours and hours of having a fake argument rather than just excluding them and just trusting myself. I'm like trying to prove it to people that don't exist. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. All right. And so what would it mean for, let me say this, what would it mean for that internal process if you could prove it to the, say, someone who doesn't support you, or these non-existent people in your head? What's the goal? What's the effort to prove that to them? What do you get from that?
Nothing at all. Like, it's so harmful. It's so toxic. But I just like I guess I want to trust myself, but anytime I try to, I just get so angry at the people who made me struggle to do that in the first place.
Yeah. Do you remember somewhere in the very beginning, I talked about the nickels in a pool or the dimes in a pool? And so every time that someone has said something horrible to you, or reminded you that you're not good enough or worthless, or showed you with some behavior that you're not important, that's like throwing a dime in that pool. And your pool's full, right? And so when I talked about that, what I was saying was we want to pull those dimes out of the pool. And every time that you are kind to yourself, or say something nice, or support yourself, or anytime I say, hey, I'm really proud of you, I'm pulling dimes out of that pool. We want to empty it. Right. And you've had so many people do so many horrible things or say horrible things, even when you were very small, right? That pool filled up really quickly and just overflows. And then you do it to yourself. And that's like this trauma bond. And we perpetuate it, thinking that we can solve it, but it doesn't work like that. We have to actually do the opposite to be able to solve it. But that's a hard thing when we think we are a certain way because we've been taught that, and that's how we feel. And then we trust the feelings, like, I am worthless because I've been taught this, so it must be true. And so when you have these cyclical conversations with people who don't exist, trying to prove something, you're just perpetuating that damage that's been done to you. Right? Yeah. And so in these sessions, we're starting to we're not only uncovering the damage, but we're saying, actually, that's not true. And that's not true. And that's not true. And that's not true. And so we're implementing truths, but your layers of trauma are so many and so deep that it doesn't really matter how good I am to you. It's not going to fix all of that. It's not going to make that go away. It's going to start to help you to do it differently. So you're not perpetuating the trauma and the damage. But at the same time, that's going to take a long time. Now, there's so many layers here. You have your trauma layers, but then you have your actionable layers. Okay. So just follow me for a second here. You have me saying, hey, I'm really proud of you. Like, great job. And then you have you saying, hey, Amanda's proud of me, so I can give myself permission to be proud of myself.
Mm-hmm.
Great job. But that's still taking dimes out of the pool. Like, that's great. We
Mm-hmm.
want to do that. But then we have, what am I going to do in my life with this newfound praise? Or with this, maybe it's not newfound, maybe it's this reoccurring praise. Because sometimes, and please correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think that sometimes the decisions that you make in your life are self-defeating and damaging, and there's various reasons for that. But isn't it true to say that you hurt yourself and then you think that you'll just take care of it later?
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's true. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so it makes sense that when someone's carrying around so much trauma or layers of trauma, that it's like, why would I be kind to myself? Why would I do something that's going to be good for me?
Mm-hmm.
Right? I'll do this thing because maybe addictively I want this thing, and then I'll fix it later, but you're hurting yourself in that process and you're not choosing to be kind to yourself. So the idea is that with what we're doing, we start to peel away those layers and we say, okay, actionably, you can make different choices. And instead of maybe getting the instant fix that you might be used to, you're getting a long-term benefit of whatever it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just curious what your thoughts are about what I'm saying, and then we can maybe throw some examples in.
I don't know. I agree with what you're saying. It's all very, very true.
Mm-hmm.
That
So,
rather I'm going, I'm so dumb, I'm so dumb, I can't do this task, I can't do this task, and then I
mhm.
start arguing with a fake person in my head being like, no, I am competent, I am capable, rather than just proving it to myself.
Yeah. How did you feel when you finally bought that car?
Relieved.
Yeah, I bet. Right? Was there any sense of pride for yourself when you did that?
Yeah, because it was kind of perfect. Like I did the negotiations perfect, I did everything. I was like, wow, this was like the best. Like part of me was like, glad I took so long. But now that I missed that pre-purchase inspection and I'm having issues, I'm being hard on myself because I'm like, I was proud and now I'm like, what the hell did I
Okay.
do?
Okay. So let's hang on to that. I am proud because when I say that, I'm encouraging you to be, I am proud in this space because you did. You did get the car.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing's going to change that.
Mm-hmm.
That is something to be proud of. So
Mm-hmm.
let's just embrace that, right? But on the other hand, okay, so I do have some questions about this pre-purchase thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to understand the rationale for not doing it because you are well researched and you told me every time we talked about this, you said, I'm going to get that pre-purchase inspection. And I said, that's a great idea, right? So what changed?
This is always how it goes. It's like I'm doing something for so long that by the time that I finally do it, I'm just like, whatever, I don't care.
Mhm.
Like, just get it over with.
It's the whatever that kills you,
Mm-hmm. I'll deal with the
right?
consequences later.
I'll deal with it later. Right? We have to turn
Mm-hmm.
that around. There, like my recommendation would be to throw that word away. Like, let's not use that word. Like, there's no or anything like that word. It because when we're making decisions for our life, whatever just hurts us,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And you were like killing it. You were like, you had everything lined up. I mean, granted, you did very many months of research and I would say excessive research, but we know why you did that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you were in this cycle, right? We had to get you out of the cycle. And so you've now gotten the car and you're out of the cycle. That's fantastic. But it's almost like, again, that self-defeating behavior that says, okay, well, maybe you can be proud of that, but you're worthless because you made this one mistake.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wonder if we can back it up. And I wonder if that part of you that's mean to yourself goes, well, I'm going to promote this whatever because I don't want you to be proud of yourself for getting this car.
Mm-hmm.
So if I can make sure that you're self-defeating in some way, then you're not going to give yourself any credit for this car. I wonder if that's happening.
Yeah, I wonder too if in the moment it felt like part of it was like, if I don't sign this fucking paper right now, this is never gonna happen. Like if I give myself a
Mm.
chance to, like, I'm it looks like I'm making a decision right now, and then part of me too is like, is it overkill to get a pre-purchase inspection because I got one last time and it actually did show something, so that's not a good example. And I'm like, they already got an inspection on it. So, yeah, I don't know. I feel like there's multiple layers to it. And
Mm-hmm.
it comes down to the, like, again, it felt like not trusting myself too, because I'm like, if I don't do this now, I'll never be able to, which isn't true.
That's right. Because you built up for so long that you had to do this thing, and then you were doing the thing, and you're like, oh, well, if I don't sign right now, then I'm not going to do it.
Oh,
But
but here's a good thing. 4 days prior, I almost bought a car that was
okay.
like 30,000, but I bought a car that was 20,000. I even took the $30,000 car overnight and drove into Vancouver and like did an
Oh, oh,
extended test drive and all this stuff.
yeah,
And I was really going to buy this $30,000 car, even though that was not the responsible financial decision.
right.
But I knew that I would, even though it would feel good, I would
Yeah.
feel bad.
Mm-hmm.
So I was super proud of myself that I bought the $20,000 car because I don't feel guilty about it. And it was like a responsible decision. And my financial advisor was like, "Oh, like good job." And I was like, "Okay."
That's
So
great.
that was a
Yeah.
moment too that I was like, "Oh my fucking god, this is the first time in my life that I've not gone with like the dopamine hit, the."
Yeah. That's fantastic. Now I'm really happy to hear that because that's progress from where we started,
Mhm.
right? That's excellent. I think what we have to get to the bottom of is the self-defeating choices, the whatever choices.
Mhm.
And if we take that off the table, if we had set kind of like, I know you have this defiance thing of not wanting to follow direction and things like that, and that's fine because I just tell you, hey, I'd like you to consider this.
Mhm.
So I'd like you to consider taking the whatever off the table because I imagine if it wasn't on the table and even if you defaulted and not bought the car, we would have still had this conversation, right? But if the whatever was off the table, would you have gotten the inspection?
Yes. But
Mm-hmm.
I have a hard time distinguishing though, because part of the whatever for me is like, okay, that voice in the head that's like taking, like, that can't make the decision. I have to tell that one, okay, whatever. Like all those irrational like reasons you have to not buy a car and to keep doing this for another fucking year,
Mm-hmm.
whatever. It doesn't matter. So it's hard for me to distinguish the, is this, do you know what I'm trying to say? Like whatever, I won't get, insert thing that's important here, versus
Mm-hmm.
this anxiety I have that's irrational, being like accepting that and being
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, that's okay. That's, so I guess I feel it's hard for me to, when I think of that whatever moment, sometimes that whatever moment is what gets me to finally do the thing that I've been unable to do, but it's also the thing that screws me at the same
Yeah.
time. So it's
Right.
used in like both situations.
Mm-hmm. So, okay, I get that for sure. I think what's coming up for me here is we can start to build your decision-making process on fundamentals of what's important to you, okay, or fundamentals of values. So I remember in first or second session, you said you got emotional and you were talking about executive function and you weren't sure if your executive function was good. And I said, your executive function is fine. It's what I'm seeing here is how you get to those decisions. And then you just like throw in the towel sometimes, right? So what's great about this decision that you made was that you weren't throwing the towel in for anything addictive, because you could have. Could have been like, whatever, I'm just going to get the nicer car, more expensive car. And you had it overnight and you didn't do that. Like, that's amazing. Congratulations. That's wonderful. So that's success from when we first talked about addiction. This whatever was wrapped up in something else. And I really think it is that self-defeat, because everything pointed to you getting that inspection. So if we had built up this decision from a place of values, personal values or personal importance, then you would have gotten that inspection, whether the purchase worked out or not. It's like that maybe would have been annoying, of having to go through this process again after so long, but you would have saved yourself from any potential issues that you might now have to deal with. Right? Now, let me put this out there too, that like sometimes, especially in corrupt business, and I won't say too much about this, but when people are trying to make sales, they will say anything to make that sale. And sometimes people are really effective in doing that. And so they don't want you to get an inspection. They know they got the inspection. Are they disclosing everything on that inspection? Hard to know, right? But at the same time, sometimes we do have to say whatever. When I bought my house a few years ago, I had to say whatever. And so sometimes it is necessary. And the reason I had to say whatever about not getting an inspection on my house was because there was a bidding war going on. And if I said to the owner, I need an inspection before I'm willing to secure this, they could have just gone with the cash offer over here, no inspection, no conditions, and we would have lost the house. And we'd been searching for a long time. So I'm not going to sit here and say to you, Jessica, oh yeah, you should X, Y, and Z. I'm saying sometimes we have to say whatever to get the job done. And then we face the consequences of that. Now, is it possible like that because I'd not gotten an inspection on my house, that there was like serious foundational issues? Or yeah, that was totally possible. And there were some things that we had to deal with that we didn't know about because they hadn't disclosed it. And it ended up not being a huge deal. So that was really good. But did I put myself in a position of risk? Yeah, for sure. Did you? Yeah, for sure. But at the end of the day, you'll deal with whatever it is. And it's a learning experience. So if you had not, if you had said, I'm going to do the inspection and lost the sale, how soon then would you have gotten a car? I don't know. How much trouble would you have had to have gone through to get a car? I don't know. Because would they have sold it to somebody else? Maybe. Right? So you have to consider all these factors. So I'm going to give you a wide breadth here to say it's okay that you said whatever. Right? We want to start to take whatever off the table, but it's okay that you did, because all of this is still excessively successful for you, like excellently, like so big, right? So I'm curious about what you think about what I've just said.
Yeah, because I have been super down on myself about not getting it, but at the same time, the car's in such amazing shape. Like, I looked at this car over 1,000 times and I'm like, I just don't think it's necessary. Like, it's in perfect shape. So it was like pretty high likeliness that this was there was not gonna be a problem. But yeah, so at the time I really felt like I was making a good decision and I felt confident about it. And maybe this is just what had to happen for me to be able to make the decision and buy a car.
Yeah, maybe. Right. And so honestly, so what? If you have some cooling, heating issues, you'll be annoyed, you'll deal with it. Right? It's okay. What's most important here is that you did the thing that you struggled the most to do. And that's fantastic. Right? So it's all around, it's celebration. Who cares that you didn't get the the thing?
The inspection.
Yeah. Who cares that you didn't get the inspection? Because at the end of the day, it's really not a big deal, right? Because you had done so much research already. And yeah, maybe you have some consequences to that. Maybe there's a little bit of a learning experience in that. And maybe next time you'll consider taking the whatever off the table and
Mm-hmm.
making a more, I want to say a more informed decision, but you were making a largely informed decision. And then
But that's
you
the
stepped,
problem is I was
okay,
too overly informed. So I'm like, okay, you don't need to be this informed. But then I go,
right.
okay, but, well, now we're underinformed. Like, when
Seems to me, and tell me if this is true or not, but you step back on your value of
everything,
needing to be prepared when you
not
didn't
just
get
that,
that
but
inspection.
everything. Yeah, I have these intense values that like consume me and impede me from doing things. And then when push comes to shove, I'm like, whatever.
Hmm. Yeah. And part of that, I wonder, is if you're just exhausted.
Yeah, because I'm putting through myself through this unnecessary, like if I didn't put myself through all those unnecessary parts,
Hmm.
I would have the energy to not say whatever. It kind of feels like.
Yeah. So although we want to try and take the whatever off the table, we also have to shorten by some large degree the length of time it takes you to make these types of decisions,
Mhm.
right? And that whole process, while you're trying to make this decision, it seems to me, correct me if I'm wrong, it seems like you're trying to find your value as a human being in making this decision,
Mm.
saying, if I do this, I have to do it. I don't know if perfectly is accurate, but I
Perfectly.
have to do it. Okay. So I have to do
Right.
it perfectly and right. And if I don't do all this research, I'm not going to do it right.
Mhm.
And then of course, so this side of you that is mean to yourself, you go and buy the car, and then it's like, oh, but you didn't do it right after
Mhm.
all of that, right? And that's just bullshit. We're gonna take that totally off the table. You did do it right, you did it fine, you're gonna do it differently in the future.
Mhm.
So you don't get screwed. But you got a car. Now you don't have to struggle whatever you were doing to for transportation
Mhm.
before. That must have been annoying for months and months.
Yeah. And
Right?
now that I
So
have all the
annoying.
mobility in the world, I'm like, what do I do? Now what?
What do you mean? What do you do? Now what?
I don't know. I've just been trapped in this house for so long and unable to do anything because I don't have a car. Because I don't have a car. Now I have a car. Then I'm like, okay, now what?
What's next? Yeah. Okay. So we can figure all that out. But my guidance on that would be live your life however you want to. Maybe the question is you don't know what you want your life to look like now that you have a car. I don't know. Do you know? What do you want to do?
I don't know. I do, maybe it's. I'm also overwhelmed. My cat is just losing her shit that I'm not giving her attention. I'm also overwhelmed because I'm like, okay, now I have all these things that I haven't been doing for the last however long because I don't have a car. Which one are you gonna pick first?
And then starts the cycle again
Yeah.
of having to make another decision. So we got to practice
Yes.
making these decisions a little bit quicker so you can
Because
enjoy your life.
yeah, babushka.
Honestly, cats are like that. Like any client I have that has a cat, it's so funny if you're
During
not
the
paying attention to the
session.
cat. They're just like all over the
Hello.
computer or they're like,
Yeah.
you know,
But if I
they're like,
want
excuse
her,
me.
but if I want her attention, God forbid, get away from
Yeah,
me.
cats are ridiculous. Cats are so funny. So, okay. Um, so maybe the next thing on our list, I want to talk a little bit about the taxes too, just to kind of acknowledge that. But maybe the next thing is like figuring out what you want your life to look like. What do you want to do with your time? Where are your values? What does that mean to you? And kind of building I want to say like a portfolio of your values and how it aligns with how you live your life and the decisions you make. And maybe that's the next step for us. What do you think?
Yeah. That sounds overwhelming.
Your face is like, oh my God. But we're just gonna do one thing at a time,
Mm-hmm.
right? One topic at a time, one item at a time. And like honestly, like you started with when you came to me or we kind of get got together, you had been trying to buy a car for 6 months and you had a few sessions and now you have a car. It actually didn't take you that long, right? So then we would just bite into the next thing
Mm-hmm.
and then you decide what you want to do with that and so on and so forth. Because at the end of the day, Jessica, it doesn't matter what you do with your life. If you're aligned with your values and you're happy,
Mm-hmm.
that's the goal. That's what's important,
Mm-hmm.
right? What that looks like is nobody's business.
I yeah.
What?
I'd
What?
I'd
What is
have
that?
I'd have to research it.
No, no. It's like, what does Jessica want to eat today? What does Jessica want to wear today?
Mm-hmm.
No, no. Okay, so we'll go into that probably next week. But yeah, tell me a little bit about the taxes piece and how you finally completed that.
I don't even remember. Where was I? I don't know. But I just well, one thing I've been doing is so I stop scrolling on my phone. I'll go live on TikTok and I'll just set my phone in the room because then I'm like being watched and perceived and then I'm like,
Mhm.
"Oh, time is passing. I should do something with said time." And I sat on my
Mm.
computer for all of fucking 10 minutes and emailed the accountant and I was like, "That was easy."
It was done.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay. Were you able to give yourself credit for doing that?
I am now.
I am now. I bet if I know you at all, I bet what happened was you sent the email and you were like, fuck, that was so easy. And then you were like, you fucking idiot. You should have done
Yes.
this so long ago.
Yes. And now that I think
Right? So
about
it
it,
was just
I
a
didn't
way
catch
to,
myself on that one.
yeah. So it's just like that part of you or that part of your psyche, just like it just needs to be mean to you. And so anything it can pull from, it doesn't matter how good you are, how what successes you have, it's going to find some angle
Mhm.
to discount it.
Mhm.
Can you talk about, if you're willing, who did that to you in your life? I don't care like you like whether it was when you were really little or whether it was when you were an adult, like whatever. What I mean is I don't care what story you tell me, but I'm curious. Who did that to you? Who was the dominant person who did that to you?
Who did what to me?
Discounted anything that was good that you did when you were trying to celebrate yourself or you were proud of yourself.
Mm. I don't know. I mean, my dad was definitely like but when it comes to but he was like that about like irrelevant dumb shit, not in situations where I was to be proud of myself. It just felt like I couldn't do anything right, like even basic things.
When it came to your dad?
Yeah. But when I think about yeah, I don't know. I guess I've just always felt like even if I do a good job or a bad job, I'm still doing something wrong.
Okay. And so with your dad, did you feel that way?
I felt that like I kind of felt that way with like every authority figure. Like even teachers, even if I was doing really good in a class, I was still
Mm-hmm.
the bad kid who's disruptive and da 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 da.
Mm-hmm.
Even if I'm doing exactly what the physiotherapists and the doctors tell me to do, and it was so hard for me to do, I'm still in shit because the outcome is not what they expected it to be, so they don't believe that I'm possibly actually doing it right. So yeah, I guess that's part of it too, is like even when I felt I was doing things right, I was told it was wrong. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, what is right? I don't even know.
Well, it's no wonder that you can't trust yourself, right? When you've had so many people do this to you. But I wonder if it started with your dad.
Yeah.
What about your mom?
Yeah, no,
How did she play into that,
she's kind of
if
the
at all?
opposite. Like she would anything we did was the best thing ever.
Okay. And so if you were praised for anything you did, how did that help or hinder your self-esteem?
I think it kind of contributed to the short-term gratification
Mm.
that like I might as well do the easy thing that feels the best because
Right.
I'm not going to get any extra pat on the back for doing more.
Hmm. So when you were, and we're going to go back to dad in a minute here, but when you were praised for everything from your mom, was there any true depth to that for you at all? Or was it just like everything was good and great? Do you know what I'm asking?
Yeah, I don't know. That's hard. My mom, I guess I've kind of just always been like this. It's surely my dad's voice because I used to I just think of my mom was always like just so confused why I was so hard on myself about everything. And she would be like, "What are you talking about?"
Hmm.
But I think it comes down to that like perfectionist thinking too, and that was very my dad, like black and white. There's a right way and a wrong way. And I
Hmm.
don't know what it is, so it's going to be wrong regardless cuz yeah, like I anything I did, I didn't find it perfect. So if my mom like if I danced and like my mom after like congratulated on me on how well I did, I was like, but I didn't do good enough. Like you're just saying that cuz you're my mom.
Hmm. How old are you when you think about that?
Like 10.
Okay. So you had then 10 years of feeling this way. You had 10 years of being treated this way, even
Mhm.
though your mom was sounded to me like she was trying to support you and trying to praise you and trying to be good to you, that you still had your dad over here doing the damage
Mhm.
for 10 years. That's a long time to fill the pool.
Mhm.
So let's consider that the strength of the influence of each of your parents. When your mom would say, "Oh, no, you did great," you didn't believe her. So her strength of influence was not as strong as dad's because you believed him when he told you that you weren't doing it right or not perfect or good enough or whatever, right? Is that true?
Mhm.
So I'm curious what it was about your dad that created this strength of influence for you.
I mean, it feels like the same way when I post a video and there's 3,000 comments telling me I'm the best thing that's ever lived, and then there's one comment criticizing me, and I'm like, that's the one I want to answer. That's the one that gets to
Hmm.
me. So I just feel like the negative stuff like imprints on my brain way harder than the
Hmm.
positive, healthy
Okay.
stuff.
But it started somewhere. And it sounds like it started with him.
For sure. Yeah. And he
Hmm.
was like that to himself.
Hmm. So that was just kind of you watched him do that to himself and
Yeah,
him do that to you, and it just became commonplace.
yeah, kind of. But also like he wouldn't you he it was his way of doing things and he's not going to teach you how. You need to
Mm-hmm.
know. And that's
Mm-hmm.
impossible. So you're obviously not going to do it
Okay.
right and then you're going to get in shit. So then I might as well not half ass it. I might as well not even fucking care and try because it's going to be the same outcome.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So I'm curious why he was so powerful in your life, though. So I know he was your dad and it started here, but you've had a lot of powerful people in your life, and you go to this example of dad
I just think
and the way he
because
was and the way he treated you.
I just think that's so much more like toxic and traumatizing and unhealthy and not what my brain was supposed to be getting. So that like
I agree.
stood out to me and canceled out anything my mom said. Because if
When did the cat, sorry, go ahead.
because if what my mom was saying was true, then my dad wouldn't say those things.
But then I want to really understand, like, why was dad so powerful? Why wasn't mom powerful? Because your brain, you're right, shouldn't have been getting all that toxicity. And usually people, we shy away from toxicity, right? We don't, if someone's mean to us, we're like, oh, I don't want to please you. I want to get away from you. And when someone's nice to us, we generally want to be closer to them. So I want to understand from a very young age why your dad took the power, why he had the power, even when you were 3, 4, 5. What was it about dad versus mom that had the power, that drew you to trusting him?
Well, I guess I felt like well, when it comes to like who's more powerful, like he's gonna say it, scream it. She's gonna speak with a soft tone. Like everything about him was just more powerful and intense. But I think a lot of it too was my dad shit talked my mom all the time. My mom didn't do that with my dad. So
Mm.
I already, she's kind of at a disadvantage there because I don't trust her as much because of things I've heard that have been put in my ear by my dad. But also, I realize now as an adult, my mom was super chronically ill. So when I like felt neglected as a child because mommy couldn't get out of bed, I look now as an adult who's also sick and can't get out of bed, and I'm like, oh. So I used to like not want to be like her. I wanted, my dad was able to like go out and do things and like be active, and like his lifestyle was more appealing to me than my mom's.
Mhm.
And I thought that was like a character flaw because that's what my dad told me. But in reality, she was sick.
Mm-hmm. So your dad was
But also like
arg.
the adrenaline probably too of like
Okay.
the fighting and like what came first, the pathological demand avoidance or the demands. Because my mom didn't put demands on me, so I didn't have any thing
Mhm.
to argue with her about necessarily. She would probably, I probably did, I still argue with things, but me and my dad would like get into screaming matches because he's gonna yell at me and tell me what to do.
Yeah.
So let's go, motherfucker.
Okay, so that's my next question is, did you enjoy any part of those screaming matches with him?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I still do. Like not with him, just with people.
That high intensity. Yeah. Do you know what it is about that you enjoy?
The passion. Um yeah, I'm assuming just the stimulation of it because I'm so like desensitized to everything else that like that was the only thing that like gave me a rush. I also, the more emotional he got and the more I argued with him, the more irrational, like obviously irrational he became. So it
Mhm.
made me be like, look, you're a fool. Why would I believe anything you say? I liked kind of proving my point. Not that I even believed it.
Because the ironic thing is that you did believe everything he said,
Mm-hmm.
but there was a power play where you would say, well, you're a fool and I shouldn't listen to you.
Mm-hmm.
that is a way of us trying to combat the trauma we've experienced,
Mm-hmm.
right? Where we can look at someone who's hurt us and say that, but at the same time, what they don't know is we still desperately need them.
Mm-hmm.
Is that fair to say that you did need your dad?
Mm-hmm.
Hmm. What's it like to talk about him?
I feel like I've done it so much that it's like,
Hmm.
yeah, I don't know. Old
Okay.
news. That's what it feels like.
Old news. Okay.
Because when I've been in therapy my whole life, that's kind of been the main topic of conversation.
He's dad. Okay. Because um I don't want to go over all the things you've already gone over, but there's something really important here
Mm-hmm.
because this is where it began.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I don't necessarily want to focus on the trauma of all of that because we've talked about that and that's not really what we're here to do.
Mm-hmm.
But we want to understand why you keep doing it to yourself. And that's the starting point. And there's something about dad that I think that we need to work out that you maybe haven't worked out yet. Because if you had worked it out, then you would not be doing this to yourself because you're basically mirroring what dad has done and what everybody else in the world has also done to you. That
Mm-hmm.
has done it to you. But that being said, you have this group of people who've done these awful things or told you that you were valueless or worthless. And then over here you have all these people who are like who have supported you and told you how great you are and told you how proud they are of you. But these people over here, for whatever reason, they don't matter as much as these people over here,
Mm-hmm.
which is interesting if we go back to the very beginning of our conversation today, where you said it's really valuable for you to have my approval.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to reconcile that for myself because why would, and this isn't about me, this is just about a mental health practitioner who's educated. That's right. This isn't about me as a person, but we have all these people over here who say, you're great and I'm proud of you. And then you have me say to you, you're great and I'm proud of you.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that different than all these people you reject over here?
I don't know. I feel like, especially now that I have a diagnosis and stuff, and I am aware of what reality is, I feel like I have better judgment, kind of. And because you have insight into that, like, usually whenever somebody like validates me or says something good, my thought is like, you just don't know any better.
Mm,
And I can't say that with you
mm, okay.
because now I feel like
Have you
I
ever,
I
go
kind
ahead.
of know better. Deep down,
You
I
do
just
know
don't believe
better.
it.
Deep down, you already know all these things that I would ever tell you, you already know.
Mhm.
The goal is to help you trust them,
Mhm.
right? Have you ever had a mental health practitioner be proud of you and have that be valuable to you?
Yeah. Yeah. The I had a counselor for a long time when I was a kid named Kathy.
Hmm.
But pride, I don't know about proud. Like, I feel like any accomplishment I made was like more so overcoming adversity, which then like the pride was like, you got out of there. Like, I don't
Hmm.
know. I guess I just think about like they were so proud of me when I was in rehab and I got an award for the most credits ever done in their institution, and I was able to like graduate high school even after not going to high school for 3 years because I was in rehab for 6 months. So it's like, yay, we're proud of you, but I'm like, I'm in a fucking treatment center.
Okay. Tell me what the emotion is about right now.
yeah, just thinking about moments in my life where I could have been proud of myself and I wasn't, and I just can't really think of anything. Because anytime I think of moments where people were like, "Oh, good job," it was like the only reason I did a good job is because I didn't choose the worst option.
Okay. And so would you say that the emotion comes from a place of like deep sadness for yourself? Uh, and do you have compassion in that sadness for yourself?
I do now.
Good.
It's just it so much of this to me comes down to like my health, my body, because even I didn't even remember this happening until yesterday. This came into my mind. I have something called postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome where I faint and I get pre-syncope symptoms, and I was in gym class in middle school and I lost my vision, and my vision is going like I just see static. And when I was younger, I used to think that was because I was so hungry I was going to die. So my body was like shutting down. So I can't see, and I'm like, I need to eat. Like I'm so hungry, I can't see. And they're like, it's a gym class. Like, what are you taught? You're so dramatic. So I knew that wasn't. I know I'm dramatic. I've became as such, but I just like, as much as I know that everything that I was saying was real, they just, everyone made me doubt my reality so much. And like thinking back now that, yeah, I don't know. It's just really crazy when just basic things about my life, like I my my head hurts, that's not real. Like I wasn't able to do things that I would have felt proud of because I was sick, but everyone's telling me that's not real. So I'm like, I don't I feel like I can't trust myself because I don't know what's real, but then also I don't have an opportunity to be proud of myself because I can't do anything. It felt like I can't do anything, and even if I do it, then my parents aren't. I'm not getting the validation that I'm seeking regardless. Not even that I'm seeking the validation, but even if I do it, it's not going to be right or it's not going to be acknowledged. It's just been insane for me to realize that like everything that I went through was real. And even saying that is so like counter, because I knew it. I knew it. But all these professionals told me and like beat me down over and over and over. And there were so many times where I was like, I guess you're right. So, like, getting all of that out of my head, I guess, is like what makes me emotional. And then I like feel so sad for that girl because she didn't have an opportunity.
Who wasn't validated. Yeah. And I think so this offers some of that reconciliation for me, what you just said, because I think that part of me saying I'm proud of you today, part of why that's valuable is because you've had so much medical trauma and so many professionals tell you that you were wrong, right?
And mental health
So
professionals too, because I was always
that's yeah,
referred to mental health professionals that were saying if you, well, like I sent you that message, Jessica, if you did the coping skills properly, your symptoms would go away. So but I am doing it properly and it's not going away. Well, then you're not actually doing it. And I'm like, okay, like, so am I like, what's real then? Because I'm telling you what's real and you're telling me it's not. So I'm not even gonna fucking try because when I do try, you still tell
of
me that
course.
I'm not doing
It
it
makes sense.
properly.
Do these people ever sit down with you and say, let's practice this so you can see how I'm hoping that you'll do it? And then you could say to them, I'm already doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Did that ever happen? Or did they
Mm-hmm.
just flat out say you were doing it wrong?
No, it was always like especially when it came to my panic attacks, it was always, let's practice self-talk. Let's practice CBT and like rewiring like your thought processes when your heart starts to beat and you start to feel dizzy and you start to pass out. Let's practice um um you know what I mean, changing directions, blah blah blah, every fucking mental health coping skill. And we would be doing it together and I would be doing what they're telling me to do, but it's not doing anything. So they would tell me like, you need to try, Jess. No, you need to really like like believe it. And I would
But
be
you
like,
were trying.
yeah.
And you were trying to believe it.
Mm-hmm.
And when you would say this to these people, I'm doing this and I'm trying and I'm showing up and I'm doing the work and it's not working for me. Was it at that point where they were saying, well, you're just a lost cause then? Or what happened then?
I'm not taking responsibility. If you
Oh, they
were
would turn it around and blame you for.
if you were actually using these
Mhm.
coping skills, you would see the change. So when you're ready to start trying and taking care of yourself, and when you actually want to start feeling better, let me know. Like,
Because by that time, you might have been like, well, fuck you then.
literally, fuck, man.
Right?
And then I'm
Yeah.
not going to
Yeah.
therapy for however long, and then I would go again and I would try.
Right.
And the problem is, of course, it helped to some extent because I do have anxiety, but 90% at that time of my symptoms were because I had something wrong with my heart. So, like, it would work sometimes, and I'd be like, okay, well, it worked in this situation. Why is it not working here, 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 here? And then I'm like trying these things over and over. Do you see this? What the heck? I'm trying these things over and over, and they're not working, and I'm being blamed for it. And I'm being told I'm not doing it right. And that's so I'm just suffering the consequences of my own actions. And I'm like I just feel like
Mhm.
they mentally abused the and unknowingly, obviously, they thought they were doing what was in my best interest, but just broke me down so much.
Mhm.
And now I'm like, I'm trying to convince myself of things, but it's always like their voices in my head. And
Mhm.
so like I start arguing with them in my head
Yeah.
instead of like being like, okay, we know they were wrong. Duh. Like there's nothing I could have said to them at the time with the information I had that would have made them realize.
So it sounds like a lot of abandonment. They just threw in the towel and then you stopped going, right? Okay.
But it was always like there's people here that, especially with mental health, resources are sparse, right? So I'm taking away a spot from someone else who's actually gonna do what I'm telling them. Like, if you're not gonna participate and you're not gonna like do what I'm telling you, then
Mhm. They just treated you like a defiant
literally verbatim.
young woman. Yeah. 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 Okay. Because so I'm mindful of time here and we'll have to wrap up in a minute, but a mental health practitioner's role is to provide support. That's the foundation, is providing support and tools, of course, practice these tools, and you've had that experience. But if I give someone a CBT or cognitive behavioral therapy tool and I say, here, try this, and that person says, that wasn't effective for me, then it's my job to say, okay, well, let's try a dialectical behavioral therapy tool instead. And if that doesn't work, let's try something else, and so on and so forth. And um, and so, unfortunately, in the profession, I don't know if a lot of practitioners stick around with the same client for long periods of time.
Mm.
And so, if they say, well, here are the tools, I can't help you because you're not doing it. It's like, well, but this is, I think about a cookie cutter, literally a cookie cutter of a snowflake. And you make a cookie of that snowflake. And every single client, you make another cookie of that
Mm-hmm.
that snowflake. And it's like, well, the cookie cutter works for this dough, for this snowflake, for this person. This works. So why wouldn't it work for you?
Mm-hmm.
And that's just bullshit. I want to I don't want to bash what other people are doing or what they have done or not didn't do or whatever. I'm not going to do that. But what I am going to say is that it's a strong opinion of mine that when you have somebody who's what we might call neurodivergent, can I say that to you? That you
Yeah.
are neurodivergent, right?
Yeah.
We have someone, and even someone who's not neurodivergent, who's pretty typical, maybe the cookie cutter works for the typical person. It's still not going to work for every typical person. And
Mm-hmm.
it sure as hell is not going to work for the neurodivergent person. So then you have to be creative in your practice. And if you take all the tools and you're with that person for years, and then you say, I'm out of tools, own it. Don't say, this has to work for you and it's not working because you're not using it. We don't say that. And people who do say that cause harm. So that's just my opinion, is that we stick with clients for a long time and we give them all the tools that we have and we support them even if the tools aren't working. And so I do think that many of these practitioners who had shorter periods of time with you for various reasons, maybe they only had a few months, maybe you were in treatment for 6 months. All of those practitioners in there couldn't continue with you because the program was over. We're limited by program stipulations,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I think that there's a lot of reasons why there was harm caused here, but the fundamental one is that they tried to put you in a box and give you a cookie cutter solution and then blamed you that it wasn't working. But what's interesting about the way we're doing it here, and honestly, I'm not that different than a lot of practitioners, but what we're doing here is working. You didn't come back to me for 6 months and say, oh, I still haven't gotten that car.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, it only took you a few months to do it. And I wasn't even there.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even, like, you didn't even need me to help you with that, to do it, this thing that you couldn't do for 6 months. So there's something different about what we're doing here than what you've experienced in this cookie cutter box that you've been placed in before.
Mm-hmm.
What is that difference for you?
To me, my first thought is just now I know since getting a diagnosis, I know what's anxiety and what's not actually anxiety. So when I apply these tools, they are actually able to work because I'm only applying them to the things that they would work on.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And so these practitioners, for whatever reason, couldn't help you to fine tune how to apply these tools or where to put them.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so you have that now, and that makes this process more effective.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not even like, there are some tools I'm giving you, but we're more just having conversations that are supportive.
Mm-hmm.
Conversations that hopefully you can feel loved in.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then you take everything that you already have and you turn it into something, which is, in this example, buying a car or getting your taxes done.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay. So that's really helpful for me to understand more about your experience, not only about your childhood with your dad, but also with this medical trauma that you talked
Mm-hmm.
about and you're experiencing. So that's helpful. We have to wrap up here, and I'm curious about your checkout, but I'll tell you my takeaway and some ideas for next session is, my sense about you, Jessica, is that you have this core passion of wanting to live a life that means something to you. Is that fair?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, something that is like where you can feel alive in it.
Mm-hmm.
Because you mentioned being desensitized, right? And so whenever your mom would say, oh, you're doing a good job, or these people would say, oh, congratulations for going to treatment, like, that is a big deal, but you're like, I just went to treatment. I didn't choose to die. I
Yeah.
went to treatment instead.
Yeah.
Like why are you praising me for being in treatment when I should be blah, 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 whatever other expectation there is, right? And so even in that, you're kind of like, I just want to have a meaningful life that I love, right? And all these people are promoting this shit that's not meaningful to you. So you're like, this doesn't matter. This treatment doesn't matter. My desensitization to everything is because none of that shit matters to me. So this is our direction. What matters to Jessica? That's what we need to focus on. But what matters to Jessica is in question because going back to dad, everything that you grew up with, you could never be good enough. So anytime that something matters to you, you can't do it right. So you can't focus on it and you can't do or fulfill that meaningful thing for yourself. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm wondering then about, these are just my ideas, and then we can decide, next session what we're going to do and just kind of go off the cuff if we want. But my argument here is that your dad's voice is your own. You have adopted everything that your dad did to you from and said to you and treated you. You've adopted all of that. And it sounds to me like a kind of a mirror of what that was. Is that true, or am I wrong?
Yes, but also just personality wise and the way our brain works is very similar too. So a lot of it I adopted, but a lot of it, like, I feel like if I never even met him, we would have been the same in so many ways as well. And the, like, kind of the way we think about things.
So there's a genetic component to that too, right? Because he was like that to himself, and that had nothing to do with you. That may have had little or nothing, or maybe a lot to do with his own childhood. We don't know. But so genetically, you were predisposed to this already. And then you had him doing it to you, which is like, okay, so I have this predisposition, which we can't control, but then also it's being impressed upon me. So I have to believe it because he's the dominant figure in our household. Right? Okay. So my idea is there's a couple different streams that we can go off of, and we can try with one and then move over to the other one as we go through different sessions. But in a nutshell, we want to be able to focus on what actually you like, what means something to you, or what you give a shit about in your life. And if you don't know, we're going to explore it. So that's one stream. And ideally, that's the way I'd like you to go long term. But to get there, does it? Yeah. Okay, good. Because then where are you going to drive? What are you going to do with your car? Like, we can talk about trips you've taken in the last few months. I think we went to Florida. I think there was somewhere else you went. And so we can talk about that, and if there was anything meaningful in that for you. And we just want to really access your passions, and not the shit that you do to get high, like frivolous relationships. That's fair for me to say, right? But things that like have depth and core and soul that you're passionate about. We want to focus on that. So I would encourage you to think about, or maybe develop like a list or an understanding of some kind that you can describe to me in our next session. Well, what that means to you. What does depth mean to you? And then on the other side here, we have your dad. And there's something, like, I'm not going to go through all the trauma, but there's something about dad that I think you and I need to work on. My little cycle here in my brain that's going, there's something there. It's not going away. So I wonder if we might want to consider maybe doing some Gestalt work. What that means is, so Gestalt has a famous empty chair exercise where one person sits in a chair and then there's an empty chair across from them, and they talk to.
I'm already want to yell at it. I'm already yeah, motherfucker.
Yeah. So the idea would be that you would have a conversation or multiple conversations with me present with your dad. Now, we don't have to use the empty chair exactly. We can actually do more of an impersonation where I take the role of dad and you react to me. Now, we're working on you actioning, not reactioning, but it's going to be a reaction, and that's okay. That's where we need to start. But I think it would be a valuable tool to help you to say,
This is so
To
toxic because we have work to do. Because immediately I'm like, this man's been dead 10 years. I can't wait to argue with that motherfucker again.
but that's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
You find passion in that.
Mm.
That's not why I'm doing it. I'm not doing it to find
Yeah.
passion, but
Yeah.
I'm doing it so you can start to stand up for yourself in a way that is healthy
Mm-hmm.
for you. And so that might mean you and I are going to fight, but I am dad. I'm going to take the role of dad. So that's just an idea. It's part of trauma therapy. It's up to you if you want to do that or not.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not actually about dad, and
Mm-hmm.
it's not about the fighting. It's all about that genuine, beautiful soul of yours to say, I am worth it. And I'm going to tell you all about how I'm worth it. But I'm going to do it in a way that's healthy for me, that
Mm-hmm.
you can't take away. And that's what we want to say to dad.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
You like it?
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever done anything like that before with any of your therapists?
No.
Okay. Well, it'll be very interesting and it could be very enlightening for you.
Mm-hmm.
Might be very emotional for you.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're saying, like, on one hand, you're like, oh, it's old news. Like, he's been gone 10 years and I've talked about this for so long, so
Yeah.
many times. This piece, I'm not convinced this is old news.
Mm-hmm.
I'm convinced that something's going to come out of this piece.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're open,
Yeah.
we can take a look at it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sounds good.
So next week, why don't we start with the the passion and the depth, and you can describe to me what that means to you,
Mm-hmm.
and then if we have time, then we can get to this piece. But they're
Okay.
two different streams because we want you to live in passion and depth in your life in a way that means something to you. But this piece around dad is to help you to get there around improving your self-confidence.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't have to do them simultaneously. We
Mm-hmm.
can split them up, but that's my overall thought of how we can proceed. What's next?
Okay. Sounds good. I'm
Yeah.
excited.
Okay. So cool. So give me your checkout. What was today like for you?
Good. Good. I I was super stressed about this car situation. Again, because of and I feel better about that now. And I feel like I can do things, so I can do them now.
Mm-hmm.
Like I can go and right now finish my to-do list for the rest of the day because I bought a car and I did my taxes, so clearly I can do things.
You can, yeah. Yeah. And that your executive function is intact.
Yeah.
And if you go to that to-do list and you're like, whatever, whatever, right? That is a form of the self-defeat because that part of your psyche wants you to suffer. It wants you to not be proud of yourself. So just notice that when that's happening.
Okay, well, my computer's about to die, Amanda. When should we
Okay.
book again?
Well, we can just text about it,
Okay.
but I would say same time next week if you
Okay.
want.
Yep.
Yeah?
Yep.
Okay, Jessica, great work today.
Thank you so
We'll
much.
see you next week.
I appreciate
You
it.
bet.
Bye.
You bet.